Hey, welcome back for another episode of Porn Rewire the podcast with me, Dr. Trish Leigh. Today we're going to talk about if using porn to spice up your sex life is the move. So, if the hijacker in you has convinced yourself that's why you're using porn, you definitely want to stay tuned and pay attention to this episode because here's what we're going to do. In our 1, 2, 3 for the day, we're going to break down each of the elements. Number 1, porn. Number 2, spice up. And number 3, your sex life. And once we're done doing that, then we're going to move into your brain hack strategy for the day, where you're going to want to get your journal out and your fancy pen and spend some time figuring out what you can do to move forward in this life, to be happy and to have an awesome sex life. So, without further ado, let's break down the elements of porn to spice up your sex life. Now, this episode is coming out of last week's episode on the 6 myths of porn, or the 6 things you might want to hear about porn. But in the last episode, I told you what the real deal is in regard to porn and those 6 ideas. One of those ideas was using porn to spice up your sex life. And in last week's episode, what we talked about is, in fact, there's research that shows not only does it not spice up your sex life, in fact, it decreases sexual satisfaction and it increases sexual dysfunction. So we're going to talk about those 2 elements a little bit, but we're actually going to dive in a little bit deeper today. And this is based on some feedback that I got from some people about last week's episode wanting to know more. Okay, so thinking about porn use, just to remind you what porn does to your brain. Porn damages your brain. Yes, I know I've become cliche all over the internet for saying so, but I wanted to clear this up also because yesterday I did a live episode or a live stream on YouTube. And I'm going to be doing them the first Wednesday of the month for the next 3 months till the end of the year. And then we'll see how it goes after that in the schedule. But a question said, can I get an MRI to see the damage in my brain? And in the live, I explained that it's functional damage most times, not structural damage. So structural damage would show up on an MRI, a magnetic resonance image, and that would show structural damage. Let's just say that. So what I work with is functional damage, which is dysfunction, brain dysfunction, which means structurally it might be okay, but functionally it's not using electrical energy in the way that it's supposed to. So when I say porn damages your brain, I'm saying it changes the way that your brain performs. But just to be clear, there is research that shows that there's cellular damage also. So the physical damage is true, but more times than not, the functional damage is going to be more evident. That's what I can see on a QEEG brain map. And if you're interested in thinking about that or seeing what that offers you, there is a webpage on my website, Dr. Trish Leigh. But I just want to be clear that when we talk about damage, I'm going to start using the word dysfunction so that you can understand it a little bit better, what I mean by this. So it's brain dysfunction. Your brain is not functioning the way that it is supposed to. So back to the idea of porn, which is our number 1 for the day, thinking about, okay, so how does porn create a dysfunctional brain pattern? How does it damage the functioning? It does so by creating a brain pattern using electrical energy that's running too fast and too slow simultaneously, and or swinging back and forth between the extra fast and the extra slow speed. And that becomes really apparent to you if you're stuck in the 4D porn cycle. The D stands for each of the 4 sections of how dopamine is being released and used in your brain. And I made this 4D cycle up. So this is the way that I explain it. Is first there's a dopamine drip, which makes your brain feel good when you have the idea that you're going to watch porn. Then there's a deluge or a flood that makes it so that your brain moves towards getting what it wants. Lots and lots of dopamine. It starts flooding into your system, basically locking in that you're going to move through and enjoy, quote unquote, a porn session or masturbate or whatever other sexual acting out behaviors that you might have going on. And we might need to visit this in the brain hack today. But the idea is once there's dopamine flowing and flooding, then what happens is after a porn session, we'll leave it to porn for here, but it applies to any other sexual acting out behaviors. After the session, your brain is drowned out with dopamine. It's been so flooded with dopamine that the D2 receptors in your brain, in the reward center in your brain, have been desensitized. And that desensitization leads to a dopamine deficit in your life. So we're going to leave porn at that, and I'm going to put a bow on it by saying that porn's a super normal stimulus that floods your brain with dopamine and damages the functioning by desensitizing the dopamine receptors in the reward center. Now, what that does to you is makes it so that your actual sex life with a human being could never, ever give you the same amount of dopamine that you're getting from porn and masturbation. So it leaves you in a dopamine deficit state just generally in your life. And now you can't reach the level of arousal with your partner that you can with porn because porn's a supernormal stimulus, more dopamine than is healthy for you. So this is going to segue us into number 2. In number 2, we are going to talk about spicing up your sex life. Now, right now, let's focus on, does porn actually spice up your sex life? I'm sure you know my answer on this one, which is based on research. No, it actually detracts from your actual sex life, which we are going to define in number 3. But right now, let's talk about spicing it up. So we already said when you're in a porn session, your brain is hyper aroused. It's getting tons and tons of arousal, very high level of arousal from all that dopamine. So hyper arousal in the screen leads to hypo, to little arousal in your life. So for healthy arousal and for a healthy sex life and to enjoy your job, to be satisfied with your partner, to have fun with your kids, to not be angry, not be irritable, to be able to attend and focus and feel motivated, to stave off anxiety and depression, your brain needs to be in healthy arousal. So we're getting back to spice it up, but let's do a continuum. So if you have your journal out, draw a line with 2 sticks on the side, which is going to reflect our continuum, and draw 1 line in the middle. On the left, write hypoarousal. On the right, write hyperarousal. In the middle, write healthy arousal. Now, to be able to have a healthy sex life and to be able to get healthy erections, because we know that hyper and hypoarousal lead to erectile dysfunction, to be able to perform and to enjoy it and to have your partner enjoy it, you need healthy arousal in the middle. So if you keep going back to hyperarousal in the screen and then you have hypoarousal in your life, you are never reaching that healthy arousal in that middle section. So if we make that continuum a 1 to 10, 10 is hyperarousal, 1 is hypoarousal, 5 is healthy arousal. So what I want for you is for you to be in healthy arousal just in general in your life all the time. Number 5, healthy arousal makes for an awesome life of joy and peace and love and laughter and feeling calm and focused. It is the sweet spot that I want for everybody. So to be able to get that, you can't keep going back between 1 and 10 because you just literally never can get to 5. The pendulum effect is 1 to 10, hyperarousal to hypoarousal. Now, if you struggle with significant erectile dysfunction, you may have tipped into artificial 5 in the middle. It's not healthy 5. It means your brain has been drowned out, numbed out so much. And it's actually more of a hypoarousal, but it means you are so stuck in neutral that you can't even pretend to get aroused because your system just can't get there. Your brain can't get there. It can't make the rest of your system get there. Okay, so now since we're focused on the idea of hyper and hypo, and we're talking about arousal, let's talk about sexuality, and we'll get to the spice it up part. So the spice it up part is hypersexuality is your brain keeps going back to sex to get the hyper arousal. So it might be fantasy, it might be lusting, it might be continuing to go back to porn, it might be sexting, it might be any of these other sexual acting out behaviors to get dopamine hits because your brain is in a hypersexual mode. So on the other end, we're going to talk about your partner now and spicing up your actual sex life, which we'll get to in a second. But on the other end, a lot of times when you're stuck in this hypersexual mode and you're looking for sex everywhere, it can distort your sexual relationship and it can throw partners into a hyposexual mode, which means your partner's not interested in having sex with you anymore because of all the distortion in the hypersexuality. So now your partner's stuck down in hyposexual mode while you're up in hypersexual. So now the divide, the great divide between you is literally 9 points off or somewhere therein. Now we're on our 1 to 10 continuum, and you've probably heard me say this before. Porn that kind of all porn actually, but definitely porn that crosses moral boundaries, that includes violence, that goes into genres that are extreme. And we know when you tip over into consuming porn that's like that, it's because of tolerance building, because your brain can't get enough dopamine because the dopamine receptors have been fried, they've been desensitized. So now you have to go to these extreme types of porn to get the same feeling you used to feel from more, quote unquote, vanilla porn. So we're going to call that a 15. So if you're watching any type of extreme genres, if you're watching a lot of porn, if it's intense, if it's frequent and consistent, your brain needs a level 15. And if your partner doesn't want to get it on with you anymore because it's become distorted, she or he might be a 2. So now you need a 15 and your partner's down at 2. The great divide. And we're going to talk about how to get that great divide healed in the brain hack. So stay with me. So let's go now from, we've talked about hypo, hyper, and healthy arousal, healthy sexuality. Number 5 in the middle for everybody is what we're going for. We're going to get to that in the brain hack. Let's move forward to your sex life. So what does your sex life include? Now, if you're willing to break your journal out and to start journaling some ideas around this, this would be amazing for you. So don't forget that neuroscience shows when you write in a journal, you process and integrate your thoughts and feelings better, hence the journal. But if you don't want your journal just out and about, you can get a lockbox or you can put it in your mattress, just like my Uncle Leo did when he was younger. When he died, he actually was my great uncle, my grandpa's brother. They found, he had no money either, or he seemingly had no money. They found thousands of dollars stashed in his mattress. So just stash your journal in your mattress. Don't let anybody know it's there so you can really process and integrate your thoughts and feelings. Okay, so what is your sex life? First, catalog your sex life with your partner. What does it include? How satisfying is it for you? How satisfying is it for her? What's going on there? Most likely, there's room for improvement or significant room for improvement. I would say just about everybody says room for improvement. Okay, now think about your personal sex life, which I would contend shouldn't exist because it's ruining your partnered sex life. So your personal sex life might include consuming porn, masturbation. It might have a lot of masturbation. It might have lusting. It might have a lot of fantasy. It might have a lot of lower level sexual media, like going on social media, but using it for sexual purposes, lower key sexual purposes. But you might find you actually have a lot of personal sexual behaviors that those behaviors are leading your brain back to yourself and to whatever the thing is for those high levels of dopamine, which means if you're taking the path back to those super normal stimuli, you're basically not taking the path towards healthy sex with your partner, or that path can't be as satisfying. So think about that. Think about where there's room for improvement in your sex life with your partner. Think about what else you have going on and understand those two things are the great divide, and that the personal sex life has to be eliminated or definitely reduced to very minimal, and it should be minimal activity that feeds your relational sex life. This is how we're going to spice it up, by being really clear what you want for your sex life. So if you want your sex life to be you and a screen, that is your choice, but recognize that is what is damaging and creating brain dysfunction in the reward center. And that is the thing that's making you feel less satisfied with your partner. It's giving you performance issues, which then will give you performance anxiety, which then makes your partner not really want to be with you. And the downward spiral and the negative feedback loop continue. Okay, so number 4 today is your brain hack strategy for the day. What do we do about all of this? How do we actually spice up the sex life? Okay, number 1, write this down. Number 1, figure out what you want. We have to use GPS in this thing. So if you were going on a trip and you got in your car and you lived in North Carolina where I live and you wanted to go to California, you can't just get in your car and drive. You will not make it to California. You have to plug that baby into the GPS so that you know how you're going to get to California. But first of all, you have to identify, I'm going to California. You have to know where you're going. So number 1 is figure out where you're going. What do you want? Hopefully you want a spicy sex life with your partner a couple times a week or 2 times a week. And if you're saying, Dr. Trish, I want a spicy sex life with my partner 12 times a week, that's hypersexuality talking. No healthy brain, no healthy arousal needs to have sex that often. So we can talk about that later. But let's dig into, what do you want? So think about what you want in terms of your relational sex life. What would make you feel good? What would give you pleasure? What brings you happiness? And what would give you connection? That's the happiness trifecta that your brain is looking for from true healthy arousal and healthy sex. So pleasure comes from dopamine, lower levels than you would get from the screen. Happiness comes from serotonin, and it lasts longer. Oxytocin comes from the connection that you get with your partner. Sex is supposed to be relational. So the people who have the contentions that, sex is evolutionary and I have a high libido, sex is evolutionary. Pornography, not. Self-sex, maybe there's aspects of it, but not in a healthy way. So we're thinking relational here. What do you want from your relational sex life with your partner? And you can even think of the acts, but here's the thing, they cannot be porn influenced. So we know most porn is violent. Most porn objectifies women. Most porn isn't a shared experience between 2 people. That's what we're going for here. So what would feel good to you in that shared experience? Now, here's the second part of number 1 is what feels good to your partner. So if you've been married for a while and now your wife doesn't want to have sex with you because this whole thing's gotten twisted, and she might not even know that you have whatever going on, but she definitely knows that the sex life you used to have no longer exists. And you know it too. Now, if you both want it back, guess what it involves? You're not going to like this and you are not going to be happy with me. Are you ready for it? It involves communication. Now, my first degree is in communication and communication disorders. So I know that the way to solve this issue is communication and healthy interactions. And I know nobody wants to hear it because it's challenging. You know how it's challenging? Because I've been doing it for 22 years with the hubs, so we can always figure out how to move ourselves forward. And it creates discomfort. But through the discomfort comes the goals that you are trying to achieve. So when it comes to sex, you have to know what your partner likes. Now, here's the tricky part. Your partner might not even know what she likes. So she needs to figure out what she likes. And the only way it's going to come online is by talking about it. And if she doesn't want to talk about it and she doesn't want to engage in a healthy sex life with you, then you have choices in that. You're not stuck in not having sex with my wife and watching porn. Like, that's not the thing to be stuck in. You heard the part where I said there's communication and interaction, and you have to come onto the same page, because if not, you're just roommates. And if you want a roommate with yourself having sexual acting out behavior, that if that's the goal you wrote down here in number 1, my goal for my sex life is, and then you figure it out. If your partner can't come on board, there's lots of communication that needs to happen until you're on the same page, or you've made a compromise that doesn't involve sexual acting out. And again, if your partner doesn't even know you've got the porn thing going on, then, it doesn't mean you need to broadcast it, but it does mean you need to work on it, bring hypersexuality down, and tell her that you are really interested in bringing your sex life back online and you want her to be on that journey with you. And if you need help with that, and this isn't the plug part, but if you need help with that, I help people with that in my neurofeedback coaching program. And Zach Carter, who's the lead coach on my Porn Brain Rewire program, he helps people also. So you can check out those services on drtrishleigh.com, because basically it needs to happen if you're going to rewire and reboot your sex life. There's also an entire module in the 90-day program of my Porn Brain Rewire program on Dr. Trish Leigh. So there's a whole 10 lessons. There's 10 plus lessons on what to do about getting your relationship back on track. But the number 1 thing is knowing what you want, what you like, having your partner figure it out, and then start trying it. What amazing idea. Having some fun sex together. And we will get to the fun part in just a second, because that is number 2. So number 2 is have some fun, for goodness sake, right? So a lot of sex, partnered sex, we'll just say, becomes mechanical because the fun's been sucked out of it by porn. And that is the truth. I know, again, you might not want to hear it, but if you have a porn habit, your brain is expecting everything that you are watching, which you're not getting from your partner. So your brain is disappointed in your partner. We know that. It's proven by science that porn consumption decreases the satisfaction in your sex life and your partner. So your brain is just let down because your partner could literally never do what you are watching in porn. So right there, it sucks the fun out of it because your brain is just concentrated on pleasure, dopamine. And you might feel this in your sex life with your partner. You might feel your brain try to take you to something that is highly pleasurable, which might be crossing a line. It might be one of those acts that you keep consuming in porn that is a supernormal stimulus. And I'm not going to give you ideas here, but you know what I'm talking about. If you watch porn, there's acts, there's things in there that make your brain light up. And you might even have tried to do it to your partner or get your partner to do it to you because you want your brain to light up at a 15. But the 15's bad for your brain. It's damaging it, creating dysfunction. So now we're going for fun, not just hardcore pleasure. Fun is pleasure plus happiness plus connection. So let's have some fun with your partner. And it will come through communication, because starting to try to have fun will almost be impossible unless you've had that conversation where you're figuring out what the two of you like and you're kind of guiding each other through a fun experience of pleasure, happiness, and connection. And I know this might sound weird, but it becomes fun. So and some of you might not have ever had this experience where you're being with your partner sexually and you're getting so much from it just because it is fun and you can see how pleasurable it is for your partner and you are enjoying your partner's higher level of pleasure. You're not being objectified because it's shared and your partner doesn't feel objectified. It's like, I'm so glad I'm being able to do this with this partner because they're enjoying it so much and I'm enjoying it so much. There's so much pleasure, happiness, and connection. That's the happiness trifecta. And if you haven't had that experience, that's the sweet spot of healthy arousal. That's what I want for you. So the idea is, let's have some fun. Let's make it erotic. Let's make it sensual. Let's make it multifaceted and multisensory. Try to squeeze everything out of it, not just the dopamine, but dopamine, serotonin, and oxytocin. Now, by the way, I live in the real world and I have 5.5 beautiful children that are always around. How does one spice up their sex life with 5.5 children always around? I can tell you this. It is not easy. But what I also can tell you is if you want it to happen, you can make it happen at the best of your ability for that season of your life and having excitement for the next season of life where there's actually a moment where no one's in the house. That would literally be amazing. Or you can go on micro vacations by yourself so that you can actually get some privacy. But it goes back to the goal and the intention. If you set the goal, I'm going to have an awesome sex life with my woman, with my man, whatever it is, if that's an intention for you and a goal, you can make it happen, but you have to make sure it's a goal. And if you've heard me talk before, my goal is to be an awesome wife, which includes having an awesome sex life, which includes making sure I'm intentional about it. And, sometimes life gets away, but I try to make sure that it's a priority to prioritize spending time with my husband in all different kinds of ways. And that goes back to intimacy, physical intimacy. Sex is the kind of key portion of physical intimacy, which is only one piece of the pie when it comes to a relationship. And so many people don't have any of the pieces of the pie filled in, never mind the sexual physical intimacy piece. And again, there's a whole lesson on that in my 90-day program, but sex life is one piece of intimacy. So like my husband and I, we could be totally weird with each other, which we are all the time. I'm trying to think of something weird that's happened lately. Weird things happen all the time. And life is pretty stressful. Like, I don't believe in stress. I believe things can come at you that will make you want to be stressful. But then, he and I have a knack for being able to just be weird and to do weird things and just to have fun with each other so that we can have this rounded out intimacy that also includes physical intimacy. And it goes through prioritizing, making it a goal, setting the intention, and knowing how you're going to do it. You have to be able to know how you're going to get there. Okay, which leads us to the third piece of the brain hack for today, and then we'll wrap it up. The third piece for the brain hack is give and take. Write that down, please. You're going to give, you're going to take. So when we talk about relational shared sex, it doesn't mean that, everybody's kind of sitting around relating all the time during your sexual experience. What it means is, and I've already kind of covered it in the fun piece, but what it means is you're willing to give to your partner so she or he can experience pleasure, happiness, and connection. So there's times you're giving, but then you allow yourself, and takes the wrong word if you're doing it right, but you allow yourself to experience that pleasure, happiness, and connection. And, a lot of women are trained not to do that. Young women are trained to be objectified. Older women, and that's not an insult because I put myself into that category, a little bit older women will say, are trained to be hyposexual, to not even think about sex. My parents would literally die if they heard me use the word sex. So, we still pretend I've never had sex, even though I have 5 beautiful children. So, to be able to enjoy sex, you can't be hyposexual. You have to be healthy sexual. To enjoy healthy sex, you can't be hypersexual either. You can't be wanting to use your partner for the take. Take is the right word in hypersexuality because we know dopamine is motivation, pleasure, and more. When you're looking for dopamine, you're looking for more, more, more. And more requires taking. That's why we've got to bring that dopamine down so that you can share. Give and take, give and take. So if you want to get this thing rolling with your partner, start giving. Find out what she or he wants you to give. Find out what giving will make your partner feel good. Happiness trifecta. Okay, I hope this helps you out, because when you have a spiced up sex life, it is so much easier to leave porn behind, which is ruining your spicy sex life. So like I told you in the Great Divide, to be able to close that Great Divide, this is it, man. You got to spice up your sex life. And if your partner won't do it with you, you have to get your partner to talk to you about it, and you have to figure it out. If you can't figure this part out, there's choices in your relationship. I don't want anybody staying stuck in the screen or stuck in bigger sexual acting out behaviors that many people are stuck in because they do not have a sex life, never mind a spicy one. So get a sex life going and throw some jalapenos on it. All right, until next time, control your brain or it'll control you.